I am serving as your master evaluator on this evening. The evaluation portion of the meeting has several purposes. It gives the speakers valuable feedback. It makes us aware of the things that we do well as areas that we could improve to help us become more effective speakers. And it helps us to learn and practice the technique of active and passive listening. Evaluators will present their reports in 2 to 3 minutes. Green light will come on in 2 minutes, the yellow light at 2.5 minutes, and the red light at 3 minutes. Also, please remember, we do not clap after each evaluation. Although the evaluator's feedback is beneficial, it is their personal critique, and we may not all agree. So now I would like to welcome to the lectern our first evaluator for Mr. Horace Freeman. I'd like to introduce, welcome to the lectern, Ms. Tasha Sanders.
Objectives were to prepare a speech that opens and closes with humor. He was to include jokes as well as deliver jokes and stories smoothly and effectively. His speech was also 5 to 7 minutes. How well did the opening story relate to the speech topic? The opening story prepared us for your speech. You started out with who knows the most romantic person in the world? And then the punchline was, I don't know him either, but when you find out, let me know. And you prepared us for your romantic stories that you've experienced in your life. I thought it was very well tied in together, your opening statement with your story. How well did the closing story re-emphasize? The speech made points. I didn't feel as if the closing statement re-emphasized your point. You were kind of pushed for time and you left with hiding behind a bush. So it really didn't, in my opinion, tie into the opening portion of your story. How well did the speaker illustrate, the jokes illustrate or emphasize the speaker's point? I felt that your jokes emphasized the point very well in your story. They were very well used. It seems like in the right place. If the speech had any tedious or complex parts, were jokes used to break them up? Your speech, I didn't notice any complex, tedious parts. They were very well delivered, where I think everyone was able to understand it, and the jokes were, like I said earlier, was perfect. The transition, I believe you transitioned your jokes very well. You told 2 stories, and in each story, the jokes that you told, it really emphasized the stories at that particular moment. The setup that you used in the beginning was appropriate, and I do think the stories that you delivered in your speech were appropriate with your opening statement. Overall, I enjoyed the speech. I would encourage you to use the word of the day because I prepared the word of the day. Good job.
Thank you, Toastmasters Sanders. She has a really good handshake. I was just going to shake my hand out for a moment there. Now I'd like to welcome evaluator Mike Normandy to the lectern, and he will be evaluating Scott Manning.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. It's my honor and privilege to evaluate Scott Manning. Scott's responsibility tonight was to speak on speech number 6, titled Effective Communications Across Vocal Varieties. His time was 3 to 5 minutes. Scott's objectives were to use vocal volume, pitch, rate, and quality to reflect and add meaning and interest to his message. Number 2, use phrases to enhance the message. And number 3, use vocal variety smoothly and naturally. And I really believe Scott did a great job. I'd like to expand on some resolute points that I picked up from Scott's example. As you know, and I know Scott very well, he's a very gifted programmer. And I thought it was particularly funny that Scott's very smart and sometimes trying to explain his point to a kind of a lay person or a non-programmer, he kind of butts his head up against the wall. And I think he shared that a couple times before. So he used a really good example of using the easel board where, as he said, a picture says 1,000 words. And I can relate that a lot too, because in my line of work, you always have to have an outline before you go into a meeting. Sometimes you have to draw things out for someone to understand it because they see a lot in a picture. And I think that's how Scott reached this individual that didn't have the capacity to understand programming language that Scott so readily does. It just cognitively he picks up on it real quick. Or other people, maybe it's not their aptitude. So he has to be a little patient, even though he's kind of churning and burning inside. You know, why doesn't he understand this program? But very wisely and with purpose, he used a picture to show us the room here. If a colleague had to come in there and kind of give him an idea of where things are particularly placed at. I thought it was really interesting that he just had a good memory of where things were, and I'm sure he can probably do this with any building. But some of the pros that I picked up were Scott did a great job with eye contact, like he always does. If you notice, he's kind of scanned the room, getting everybody's eye contact for just a little while, not to kind of stare you down, but he kind of worked the room, and he used good voice inflection. I think that was really good. He mixed words up, good variety, gave us 2 really good examples. And you know, also he started with a question. I thought that was really cool. It's the one good way to really get your audience's attention. Start with a question to create some interest and some intrigue, and where's he going with this? I thought that was really good. If I could say one thing, and I've noticed this down in the book, is Scott could maybe project his voice a little louder. He's a really intelligent guy, and I was trying to kind of have to lean forward just a little bit, Scott. You know, maybe just yell at us a little bit more next time, because we really want to hear what you're saying. Always try to pick up what he's saying. Just a little louder. Projection might help a little bit to kind of just make sure we're not having to kind of pull the ears out a little bit. Overall, I thought it was a great informative speech. I liked the example here, and I can relate to the example here that a picture does tell 1,000 words, and I thank you for your speech. Thank you.